DLC is something that can be very hit or miss in terms of quality. It also seems to be a point of contention for a lot of gamers, and this isn't really surprising considering how much bad DLC there is compared to the good ones. And with the ever-increasing number of games with season passes, it becomes ever more infuriating when there is bad ones. So today, we're going to take a look at some of the best and worst as we try to find the bright side of DLC. So the first category of DLC I'm going to talk about is what I like to call the pay to finish the story, or PFS for short kind of DLC. Now I personally think this type of DLC is one of the sleaziest things games companies have tried to do in recent years, and is probably one of the bigger reasons for people becoming outraged with DLC as a concept. And in my opinion, one of the worst offenders of using this kind of DLC is a game called Asura's Wrath, a hack-and-slash game whose story was heavily influenced by anime stylings. Now while the actual combat and overall plot itself was kinda dull, the very over-the-top way it did everything gave the game a certain charm in my eyes. Until the end of the game happened. Just when everything looks to be wrapping up and starting to kind of make sense, the game just abruptly ends with the actual conclusion of the tale being behind the DLC paywall. Now I have played some bad games in my time, and I did not begrudge any of them for the time they took from me playing them. But this was the first exception. This was the first game where I felt robbed of the 8 hours of my time it took to get to that point. Now luckily this practice has seemed to fall out of favor recently after this one and a few other instances. Dead Space 3! So it looks like we hopefully won't have to put up with this anymore. Now the next category I'm going to talk about is the pay-to-win style of DLC. And no, I'm not talking like free-to-play MMO type of pay-to-win. That's a whole other can of worms I won't get into right now. I mean like pay to gain 10 levels in an RPG, or pay to unlock upgrades in a hack-and-slash game. Now look developers, I understand that not everyone who plays these types of game has a lot of time that they can dedicate to them. However, I feel it shows a certain lack of confidence in your game's ability to hold the audience's attention, or its ability to entice them to come back and stick with it. I mean, imagine if a game like Skyrim had this type of system. It would destroy part of what made that game so enjoyable, like the feeling of exploration and accomplishment from the time it took to get your character to the status of a god. And if you as a developer feel you need to put this kind of DLC in your game, then you need to figure out what it is making you so insecure about it. But enough misery and woe. I think it's time to talk about some of the good types of DLC. And one of those that I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for is what I will deem the pay-to-look-pretty kind of DLC. That's right, I'm talking about skin packs and costumes. Now look, I'm not saying that all of these are good. There are definitely a lot of them that are overpriced for what they are. But the ones that aren't is a really good way for someone who enjoys the game to continue to support the developer. And given that the skin has no impact on the game other than your visual enjoyment, I see no problem with these. And I don't know about you guys, but I love going around as animated series Batman in the Arkham games. It's essentially like giving console gamers access to certain mods that they otherwise wouldn't have any access to. But before we start the argument of, but mods are free, remember that most of the time these mods are made by fans who either really love the game or love making character art, and they do it in their free time. Whereas with skins, the developer actually has to pay people to make them. Therefore, the little bit of money it takes to make Batman look like Adam West is a way of helping to make sure that the developer can continue to make games you enjoy. Now, the last type of DLC I'm going to talk about is my favorite kind, the expansion pack style. As their name implies, these are the type of DLCs that either expand upon a game's universe, like Skyrim's Dawnguard or Dragonborn, tell us new stories after the game's conclusion, such as Fallout 3 Brotherhood of Steel, or expand on details from the main story that were only talked about, such as Left Behind with The Last of Us. Now I could probably talk for hours on DLC like this, but I'm going to try to keep this brief and talk about the latest gem, Witcher 3's Blood and Wine. Now CD Projekt Red, the developer behind Witcher 3, has always been amazing with their DLC, making the entirety of the DLC for both Witcher 1 and 2 free content updates. But just like they raised the bar with the release of Witcher 3, they made an astounding DLC to match, giving the same level of detail they gave to their main game, creating yet another entire world for us to explore. And this is the kind of standard that other game companies need to hold themselves to. Now, I'm not saying they all have to be as good as CG Project Red. That would be impossible. But they need to hold themselves to some standards when making these games in DLC. Although I guess if they did that, I would kind of run out of things to talk about on my show. On second thought, keep doing what you're doing, developers. Well, that's enough rambling for now, guys. If you like this video, go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons. And if you want to discuss this further or have any other games you'd like brightened up, feel free to leave a comment in the sections below. Thanks for watching, everyone, and until next time, keep gaming.